Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. He was fired for helping an old man, but he didn't expect his life to turn upside down like this. Jamal Harris was 30 years old. African-American, slim, a little over 6 feet tall. He had deep eyes, full of a quiet fatigue, but also of a kindness that asked for nothing in return. He worked as a cashier at a supermarket chain, Midway Market, one of the only remaining stable employers in the small town of Clayton Hill, nestled among the icy hills of Missouri. Every day for almost 7 years, Jamal arrived at work 1 hour early. It wasn't out of ambition, nor to look good. It was out of respect. Respect for work, for people, for his mother, who had taught him punctuality as an act of dignity. He greeted colleagues, often younger or more distracted, with a sincere smile, asking them how their children or parents were. He helped stock the shelves before opening, cleaned the shopping carts without being asked, and sometimes even fixed a rickety shelf with whatever was at hand. He took on the things others avoided, cleaning the restrooms, picking up items left behind by customers, helping an elderly customer carry her bags to the icy parking lot. He wasn't ambitious in the society sense. Both had ethics, and above all, he was deeply human. His mother, Darlene Harris, a former night nurse, had passed on to him some simple but rock-solid wisdom. If you can't change the world, change someone's day. And above all, remain a man, even if you are pushed to your knees. Jamal grew up in the deprived neighborhood of Baden, in St. Louis, in a building where in winter the heating didn't always go up to the 3rd floor. He had seen his childhood friends get sucked into the streets, some into drugs, others into gangs, still others into resignation. He had resisted, not because he was better, but because he had an inner strength fueled by the love of his family and faith in something greater than himself. His wages were modest, $13.50 an hour, barely enough to survive, but he still managed to send $200 to his little sister, Jasmine, a brilliant nursing student at the University of Springfield. He also paid for part of the medication for their mother, who suffered from diabetes. That January Wednesday, the sky was low and the cold biting. Snow covered the sidewalks in a silent veil. Inside the supermarket, the artificial heat contrasted with the gloomy winter atmosphere. Customers filed past, bundled up, hurried, anonymous. Then an old man entered. His figure was frail but dignified. He wore a faded military jacket, too light for the season, a threadbare wool hat that almost fell over his eyes. His worn boots slipped slightly on the wet tiles. He moved slowly, as if each step required effort. Jamal watched him approach. He immediately saw details others would have missed: the ragged breathing, the stiffness in his fingers, the loneliness in his eyes. The old man placed a few essential items on the checkout belt: 3 cans of Campbell's soup, a wholemeal loaf, a carton of milk, and some cheap fruits. When Jamal scanned the items, the total was displayed: $27.46. The old man, Mr. Leonard Parker, 82, as Jamal would later learn, pulled out a cracked leather wallet from another era. Inside, he found a few crumpled bills. $14, that's all he had. He remained silent for a moment, his eyes lowered. Then, in a trembling voice, he said, "I'm sorry. I didn't see that prices had gone up. I'll return the milk and the fruit." Oh well. Jamal felt a tension in his chest. He glanced discreetly around. His manager, Todd Brenner, a white man with a tight jaw and a dry heart, often watched the cash registers from his glass-fronted office, ready to punish the slightest deviation. But at that moment, Jamal didn't hesitate. He discreetly took his own bank card from his pocket, slipped it into the machine, and typed in his PIN with quick movements, as if erasing the injustice before it could freeze. The validation beep sounds. The old man looked up in surprise. "Why are you doing this, son?" he asked, as if he didn't believe it. Jamal answered him softly, his eyes staring straight into his. "Because no one should have to choose between eat and survive, sir." He packed the items and carefully placed them in a bag, then handed them to her with a slight smile. "Take care of yourself. It's cold outside." Mr. Parker didn't answer right away. He looked at him for a long time, as if trying to engrave that face in his memory. Then he nodded slowly and went out. Under the falling snow, his figure moved away, alone, but this time, with a little more dignity. Jamal, for his part, went back to work as if nothing had happened. He had no idea, at that moment, that this discreet act, almost banal for him, would become the turning point in his life. The next morning, as the sun tentatively peeked through the heavy January clouds, Jamal was called into Todd Brenner's office. He knew the summons, the sharp tone, the lack of a smile, the coldness that filtered through the break room windows to his cash register. He walked slowly, his badge still around his neck, his heart heavy, already guessing the outcome. Todd was waiting for him, sitting behind an impersonal desk flanked by dusty binders and printed reminders of company policies. His fingers drummed on the wood like a relentless clock. "Jamal, sit down." Jamal obeyed silently. Todd crossed his arms. "We saw you on the surveillance cameras yesterday. You know very well what you did." Jamal frowned, not feigning ignorance. "You mean the old man?" "I helped him. He was a few dollars short, so I paid. Out of my own pocket. I didn't want to. It's not up to you. We don't give gifts here. No exceptions. Not even with your own card. But it wasn't a robbery. I didn't break into the cash register. I didn't ask the company to cover it. It was a humane gesture." Todd shrugged implacably. "Whatever. You broke protocol. And management is clear on that. You're fired. Effective immediately. You'll pick up your things this afternoon." A silence fell over the room. Jamal stood frozen for a few seconds. 10 years. 10 years of flawless work, of overtime never recorded, of Sundays sacrificed, of polite smiles even in the face of the most contemptuous customers. All wiped out. Destroyed by an act of kindness. He nodded wordlessly, his gaze unfocused. As he left the office, his colleagues avoided his gaze. No one said anything, not even a goodbye. The walk home was longer than usual. He took the quieter streets, the wind rushing through his jacket, chilling his thoughts. When he got home, he put his coat down slowly, as if each movement weighed a ton. His sister Jasmine, dressed as a nurse, was studying at the living room table. She looked at him, worried. He didn't say anything. Not right away. And when he told her, his voice barely cracked. "I was fired." Jasmine looked down. She immediately understood what this meant. Her studies, their plans, the fragile balance of their daily lives was being disrupted. That evening, their mother, Deborah, served him hot soup without question. Then, in silence, she sat down beside him and gently placed her hand on his shoulder. This simple gesture, laden with all a mother's love, spoke more than any words. The following days were gray and harsh. Jamal did odd jobs around the neighborhood, shoveling snow, repairing a gutter, delivering groceries. Anything to bring in a few bucks. He kept smiling, but deep down, a dull anger simmered. Why did good things cost so much? 2 weeks later, one frosty morning, while he was helping to shovel the driveway of old Mr. Coleman, his neighbor across the street, a black sedan pulled up in front of his house. The tinted windows obscured the interior. A man in a dark suit got out and approached calmly. "Mr. Jamal Harris?" Jamal sat up, surprised. "It's me. I work for Mr. Leonard Parker. He asked me to give you this, and to ask if you would be willing to come and visit him. He says you gave him more than just a bag of groceries." Intrigued, Jamal agreed. He got into the car, his thoughts racing. Leonard Parker's house stood on the edge of Clayton Hill, in an old, elevated neighborhood, almost timeless. The building, made of red brick and heavy timbers, looked like it had stepped straight out of another century. Inside, the sweet smell of burning wood hung in the air. Leonard sat in front of the fireplace, a dog lying at his feet. "Jamal, come here. Sit down, please." Jamal sat down, still a little intimidated. "I didn't tell you everything that day. I was a major in the army. I've been through things no human being should ever have to see. I lost my wife 10 years ago, and I've lived alone ever since. But I also built a company, Parker & Sons. A company that now owns more than 120 real estate sites across the country." Jamal said nothing. The surprise left him almost speechless. "When you helped me, it wasn't just a gesture of charity. It was a reminder that kindness still exists. And I thought, if someone like you can reach out without expecting anything, then it's time for people like me to do the same." He handed Jamal a file. "I want you to work with me. I'm offering you a position as a community project coordinator. Your mission? Oversee the renovation of housing for veterans and low-income families. Salary 3 times what you were getting. Training included. And most importantly, a real job." Jamal felt tears welling up. He thought of his mother, of Jasmine, of every morning he'd gotten up despite his fatigue, of that gesture he'd thought was insignificant. He held out his hand, trembling. "Thank you, Mr. Parker. I don't know if I deserve all this. You deserve it. Because you have shown what very few still dare to do in this world. Be human." And that day, without expecting it, Jamal Harris understood that an act of kindness can sometimes open doors that neither degrees nor years of service can open. In just a few months, Jamal established himself as a key pillar of the company. Where others saw crumbling walls and forgotten neighborhoods, he saw promise, stories, lives to rebuild. He didn't work for wealth or recognition. He worked for a cause, restoring dignity to those who had been left behind. Every morning, he put on his worn jacket, crossed the city, and stopped for a long time in neighborhoods where no one wanted to invest anymore. He talked with the residents, sat on the steps, and listened to the old people tell of better days. Then, he took action. He launched several pilot projects, transformed abandoned houses into warm homes, and above all, he hired young people from the street, often ignored, sometimes feared, but always full of potential. Jamal created a reintegration program he called Building Together. He called on local associations, psychologists, trainers, and retired artisans. The young people he trained weren't just employed, they became actors in the transformation of their own communities. Little by little, the streets filled with color, the walls were adorned with frescoes, and the gardens were reborn. A new energy was circulating. One day, with the support of Parker and Sons, he opened a community center in the heart of St. Louis. The building, a former abandoned warehouse, became a vibrant place, full of music, workshops, children's laughter, and plans for the future. He named it simply the Helping Hand Center, but behind those renovated walls was Jamal's vision, to provide a space where everyone could find a second chance. One Thursday morning, while he was giving a talk on resilience and engagement at a disadvantaged high school, a local journalist, moved by his humility and the power of his message, decided to write a story about it. The story snowballed. Within days, it was shared statewide and then nationally. It was called "The Kind-Hearted Man Fired for Donating a Grocery Bag." But today, this man was rebuilding lives. A year to the day after his dismissal, Jamal was invited to a ceremony hosted by Clayton Hill City Hall. The packed municipal hall echoed with applause and emotion. The mayor solemnly pronounced these words: "Today we honor a man who changed our city not by force or words, but by example. A man unjustly punished, who turned his fall into elevation. He reminded us that the simplest gestures can be the most powerful." In the audience, silent, Todd Brenner, his former manager, sat at the back. Since the incident, the supermarket he ran had lost many customers. Social media hadn't forgotten. Neither had the locals. Todd's image had been forever tarnished by his lack of humanity that day. After the ceremony, Jamal, dressed simply but dignified, approached Todd. There was no resentment or triumph in his eyes, just a disarming peace. "Thanks for firing me, Todd. Without you, I wouldn't be who I am today." He extended his hand. Todd, surprised, shook it with a mixture of embarrassment and shame. Then Jamal smiled at him and walked away calmly, admiring glances on his face. Today, Jamal Harris leads several social housing projects across the United States. He regularly lectures at universities and collaborates with humanitarian foundations. He has never forgotten Mr. Leonard Parker, the discreet man who, recognizing his gesture, reached out to him at just the right time. 2 years after their meeting, Mr. Parker passed away peacefully, leaving behind a letter of gratitude and a donation in his name to continue the work he had begun. On the door of the Helping Hand Center, a bronze plaque gleams in the sun. It simply reads, "To those who reach out, even when they themselves are in need." And under this sentence, engraved in sober letters, "In memory of Leonard Parker, and in honor of Jamal Harris."